Roll camera. That's it, hold steady.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're walking right into the gold room. We're staring down that geometric carpet, looking at the twins in the hallway, and we're picking up the axe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we are talking about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. But before you think, okay, I know this one. It's the movie where Jack Nicholson goes crazy in a snowy hotel. I really want you to hit pause on that assumption.
Right, because the stack of sources we have today suggests that if you only look at the ghosts or the elevator of blood, you are completely missing the actual horror story.
Exactly. And our mission today is to, well, basically peel back the wallpaper of the Overlook Hotel. We aren't just talking about ghosts today.
No, we are looking at two very distinct but surprisingly connected layers of this film. On one side, we've got this psychological roadmap of family trauma that is terrifyingly clinical in its detail.
And on the other side, which I'm honestly so excited to get into, we have a forensic investigation into the end of the movie, specifically that famous final photograph from 1921.
Right, and it's a fascinating duality.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, usually when people dive into The Shining, they end up in wild conspiracy territory. Moon landings, minotaurs, all that stuff.
Yeah, the maze of internet theories.
Right. But research we're pulling from today is grounded in serious trauma-informed film analysis and deep historical research. We're going to find out that the man in that final photo, the guy Jack Nicholson literally replaced, was a real person.
A real historical figure who was entirely erased to create the film's chilling ending.
He had a name, a whole career, and this wildlife story. So let's unpack this. We've got sources ranging from trauma theory to historical archives about 1920s London.
Let's start with the psychology, though, because before we get to the technical wizardry of that final shot, we really have to understand what the Overlook Hotel actually is within the narrative.
Right, so in the movie, strictly speaking, it's a haunted hotel built on an Indian burial ground. That is the text.
But the subtext, the analysis we have here, argues that the hotel functions as a massive architectural metaphor for an abusive home.
An abusive home. Break that down for us.
Well, think about the structure of it. The Overlook is grand. It's high society. It looks perfect on the outside. Very impressive to the neighbors, so to speak. But inside, it's isolating. It's rotting. The boiler is constantly threatening to explode down in the basement. Our sources point out that this perfectly mirrors the experience of families living with domestic abuse.
That idea of the facade really stuck out to me in the reading. You present this perfect image to the world, the happy family, the reliable caretaker, but behind closed doors, it's just chaos.
And the isolation is the key component there. Abusive environments often rely on cutting victims off from the outside world to maintain control.
So the snowstorm isn't just a plot device.
Exactly. The snowstorm represents that social isolation. No one is coming to help you. You are trapped with a volatile parent, and the world outside has simply ceased to exist.
Which naturally brings us to Danny Torrance, because in pop culture, his ability, The Shining, is treated like a superpower, like he's a little wizard who can talk to the chef telepathically.
Right, but our sources reframe this in a way that is frankly heartbreaking. They identify The Shining not as magic, but as hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance?
Yes.
Yes.
This is a crucial distinction. If you grow up in an unsafe home, you don't develop magic, you develop radar.
You learn to read the room instantly.
Exactly. You know if your dad's footsteps sound heavy or angry on the floorboards. You know if the vibe has shifted long before anyone says a single word.
So when Ganny is seeing the blood in the elevator or seeing the twins, that's not just psychic ability. That is a child anticipating violence before it erupts.
It's a survival skill. The sources point out that Danny represents the intelligent adaptation of a child in danger. He is constantly scanning the environment for threats.
And then there's Tony, his imaginary friend.
Right.
The little man who lives in his mouth, which is still the creepiest thing about the movie to me.
It is deeply unsettling to watch, but if you look at it clinically, a psychiatrist wouldn't call that a ghost possession. In a trauma context, Tony is a dissociative coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism?
Yeah. When the adults in the room fail to provide safety, the child's brain creates an inner protector. A voice that says, hide or don't go in room 237.
Wow. It really changes how you watch those scenes. He isn't just a creepy kid talking to his finger. He's a lonely kid creating his own safety net because his parents just can't do it.
Speaking of the parents, though, we really have to talk about Wendy Torrance.
Oh, Wendy. This is such a contentious topic. I feel like I need to defend her right out of the gate here.
Go for it.
For decades, people, critics, audiences have called her weak. They say she's annoying, she's screamy, she's just a helpless victim. I mean, Shelley Duvall took so much heat for that performance.
She really did.
But the analysis we have today flips that script completely.
It does, and it is such an important correction. If you view Wendy through the lens of trauma theory, she is not weak at all. She is performing what psychologists call anxious appeasement.
Anxious appeasement. What does that actually look like in the context of the film?
It's intense emotional labor. It is the exhausting work of constantly trying to soothe an unpredictable partner just to prevent an explosion.
Like that scene early on where Jack is typing and he completely snaps at her.
Yes, exactly. He says, "Don't come in here when I'm working," and he's incredibly aggressive about it.
And her reaction is to apologize immediately. She backs away, she offers to make him coffee, she literally makes herself smaller.
Because she is de-escalating. She is walking on eggshells the size of bowling balls. That isn't weakness, that is pure survival mode. She's trying to keep the family unit together because she knows if she pushes back, the boiler explodes.
But the sources highlight her arc, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't just stay in that appeasement mode forever.
No, she doesn't, and that is why the weak criticism is so unfair to the character. The moment she realizes Danny is in immediate physical danger, specifically when she sees the bruises on his neck, the appeasement stops completely.
The switch flips.
The switch flips. She locks Jack in the pantry. She takes a baseball bat to a man twice her size. She goes out to get the snowcat.
She is the one who actually gets the job done. Jack is out there stumbling around in the snow, freezing to death. But Wendy is executing a highly decisive escape plan.
Precisely. She chooses safety over the illusion of the happy family. That takes immense courage, and it's arguably the hardest step
Wendy,
in
I'm
breaking
home.
a cycle of abuse.
And then, of course, there's the source of the cycle, Jack.
The man with the axe.
Yeah, the easy take is always Jack is a monster or the haunted hotel made him crazy. But the sources paint a much more complicated picture of him. They frame Jack as a representation of untreated generational trauma.
Jack is what happens when you externalize your pain. The movie gives us hints that Jack was likely abused himself. There are lines about his own father, about the violence in his past.
But instead of facing that, instead of dealing with his alcoholism or his failures as a writer, he projects it onto his family.
Right. It's the idea that he would rather destroy his family than face his own wounds. And the film doesn't excuse him for this, but it illustrates the absolute tragedy of an adult who actively chooses not to break the cycle.
He becomes the danger he probably feared when he was a kid. He passes it down.
So psychologically, the ghosts in the hotel aren't just spooks in sheets. They are the echoes of that trauma. They are the past refusing to stay buried.
Which is actually the perfect transition to the end of the movie. Because if the overarching theme is the past refusing to stay buried, there is no better visual than that final shot.
That legendary slow zoom.
Yes, we are in the gold room hallway. We see the black and white photos on the wall. The camera pushes in closer and closer until we finally see him. Jack Torrance, center frame, smiling in a tuxedo.
And the date at the bottom reads Overlook Hotel, July 4th, 1921.
It implies he has always been the caretaker. He's trapped in the cycle forever. But this is where we really need to put on our detective hats. Because the sources reveal that the photograph is real. Well, mostly real.
This is where the story shifts from psychology to history. Kubrick didn't stage that photo from scratch. He didn't hire 100 extras and dress them all in period clothing. He found an actual archival photograph from the 1920s.
And the man Jack Nicholson replaced wasn't just some random extra in the background.
No, he wasn't. And this is the part that is so often overlooked. The man in the original photograph was named Santos Casani.
Santos Casani. It honestly sounds like a magician or a silent film star.
He was a star, in a way. He was an absolute legend in London, but his story starts way before he ever set foot in a ballroom. He was born Joseph Zisling in 1893, a Russian-born British subject.
Okay, so we have a Russian immigrant who ends up in a tuxedo in a haunted hotel in Colorado. How does that leap happen?
Well, first he serves in World War I. He was a decorated officer. He saw the horrors of the trenches, the chaotic violence of the early 20th century. But after the war, instead of crumbling, he pivoted hard. He reinvented himself entirely.
He became a dancer.
Not just a dancer, he became the dancer. He was a massive impresario. He owned high society clubs in London. He was famous for bringing order and technical precision to the chaotic jazz age dances. He essentially believed that dance could civilize people after the trauma of the war.
I love the detail in our notes about radio dance. This sounds fake, But you are telling me it's real.
It is 100% real. Santos Casani was so famous and so dedicated to teaching dance that he actually taught the Charleston via radio broadcasts on the BBC.
How does that even work? Okay, listeners, move your left foot, no your other left. It just seems completely impossible.
It sounds absurd, right? It's a total paradox, teaching physical movement through audio. But he did it. He would describe the steps, call out the timing over the airwaves. He was a true pioneer of mass media. He brought the Charleston directly into people's living rooms.
So let's look at the contrast here, because it is staggering. You have Santos Casani, a man who represents life, movement, connection, and social order. A guy who is literally broadcasting dance into homes to help people recover from the trauma of the war.
And on the other side, you have Jack Torrance, a man who represents death, stagnation, isolation, and chaos.
And Kubrick takes Casani's body and just pastes Jack's head onto it.
It is a massive irony. Kubrick uses a symbol of vitality to represent eternal death. It's almost a violation of Casani's legacy.
It's erasure, pure and simple.
Exactly. We talked about erasure in the context of abuse, how the abuser denies the victim's reality. Well, the film production literally erased a real man. They airbrushed his face right out of his own life story.
I really want to get into the technical side of this airbrushing because the sources go into some incredibly deep detail here. Today, if I want to swap a face in a photo, I open Photoshop, I use a lasso tool, hit autofill, and I'm done in 5 minutes.
Right, but this was 1980. There is no Photoshop. There are no pixels to manipulate. This was a completely analog, pre-digital feat of engineering.
So how did they do it?
Roll
Because
camera.
looking at the movie, it is flawless.
That's it.
Well,
Hold steady.
Kubrick, being the notorious perfectionist he was, looked through hundreds of archival photos. He didn't want to shoot a new one because he felt modern film looked too clean. He wanted the natural grain. He wanted the specific chemical degradation of a 1920s print.
He wanted the soul of the image.
He did. So he finally finds this publicity shot of Casani from 1923. And by the way, the real photo is from 1923. They just changed the caption to 1921 for the movie to fit the timeline of the Overlook.
Another layer of lying.
Everything is a fabrication. But he chooses the specific photo because of Casani's posture. Casani's holding a cigarette, he's leaning forward, he has a specific, almost manic energy in his shoulders. Kubrick thought it matched Jack's character perfectly.
Okay, so now they have the photo. They have Jack Nicholson on a soundstage in 1980. How do they actually merge them without computers?
It's a process called anatomical mimicry. Nicholson literally had to become a physical mirror of Casani. They built a specialized rig to hold Nicholson's head in the exact position.
Like a vice.
Essentially, yes. He had to match the specific tilt of the cervical spine, the elevation of the shoulders, even the exact way the chin was tucked. Because if the angle is off by even 1 degree when they pasted the head onto the body, it looks disembodied. It looks like a cheap cut-and-paste job.
Like a weird Terry Gilliam cartoon from Monty Python.
Exactly. And Kubrick demanded it look entirely seamless. So Nicholson is contorting himself to match a dead man's posture. It was apparently physically painful for him to hold that grin while twisting his neck just so. And then comes the darkroom magic.
The silver halide alignment.
That's the technical term. You have the original photo, which has a very specific grain structure because of the chemical emulsion used back in the 1920s. Then you have the photo of Nicholson taken on 1980s film stock. They look completely different. The texture is different.
So they have to degrade the new photo of Jack to make it match.
They have to chemically simulate the degradation. They soften the focus. They add artificial grain. They match the contrast curves perfectly. They are essentially aging Nicholson's face chemically to match the surrounding historical artifact.
It is an incredible piece of craftsmanship, but it's also really spooky when you think about it. They are performing surgery on a historical document.
They really are, and when you put it all together, it heavily reinforces that theme of being trapped. Casani is permanently trapped in a fictional narrative. Jack is trapped in the hotel.
It brings us right back to that word, erasure.
Yes, that is the thematic thread connecting the two halves of our deep dive today. Abusers erase the reality of their victims. They say, that didn't happen, or you're crazy. They force the family to live in a highly distorted version of reality.
And in a meta-sense, the film production erased Santos Casani to serve its own narrative. They took his real-life success story, the Russian immigrant who survived a world war and became a star, and they turned it into an American nightmare.
It makes the ending feel so much heavier. It isn't just a cool movie twist. It's a tragedy on multiple levels. You are looking at a stolen moment in time.
But I want to go back to something we touched on earlier. Because if we just leave the conversation there, with everyone trapped and history erased, That is incredibly bleak, and frankly, a bit depressing for you listening at home.
It is. But the sources are very careful to emphasize that The Shining isn't just a cautionary tale about the trap. It's also about the escape.
Danny and Wendy.
They get out. And I think audiences often focus so much on Jack freezing in the snow maze that we completely forget the final image of the snowcat driving away.
That is the real ending. The monster does not win completely.
No, he doesn't. The cycle is broken. Wendy completely rejects the anxious appeasement. Danny listens to his shining, his survival instincts, and uses them to outsmart his father in the maze. They retrace their steps, and they physically leave the trauma behind.
So while Jack becomes part of the wallpaper, literally becoming a two-dimensional image in the hallway, Wendy and Danny remain three-dimensional people moving forward in the real world.
Exactly. They choose reality over the delusion of the Overlook. And that is the ultimate victory in trauma recovery, reclaiming your reality and breaking the silence.
So what does this all mean for us the next time we sit down to watch the movie? Because I don't think I can ever look at that photograph the same way again.
I think it deeply enriches the experience. When you see that final fade, that slow zoom into the ballroom with the 1920s jazz playing, you are looking at a profound paradox. You are looking at a double haunting.
A double haunting. I love that phrasing.
Yes. You are seeing Jack Torrance, the man who absolutely refused to heal, trapped forever in his loop of violence. But if you look closer, beneath the darkroom airbrushing, you are also seeing the ghost of Santos Casani.
A man of dance.
A man who actively tried to bring joy and order to a very broken world. He is still there, hiding in the grain of the film.
It's a stark reminder that whether you are looking at your own family history or just a prop in a classic movie, there is always a deeper layer of truth waiting to be uncovered. You just have to be willing to do the work.
You have to peel back the wallpaper. And I think there's a final provocative thought here for everyone listening. Think about how many times you've seen that image. On posters, on t-shirts, in pop culture.
Oh, everywhere. It's iconic.
But every time we reproduce that image just as a horror icon without knowing the history, we are sort of participating in that erasure. We are celebrating the fictional abuser and completely forgetting the real-life trauma survivor who actually stood in that room.
Wow, that is heavy.
Right.
We are literally wearing the erasure on our shirts.
It really makes you reconsider the media we consume and what gets lost in the edit.
It really does. And hopefully, unlike Jack, we all find a way out of our own mazes instead of getting trapped in the frame.
Ideally, yes.
Well, that is a lot to process. I'm definitely going to need to track down some upbeat 1920s radio dance lessons to clear my head after this.
Step, shuffle, step.
Exactly. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Overlook. We really hope this helps you see The Shining in a completely new light.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We will catch you on the next deep dive.